Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to unlock a profound secret, one hidden right there in plain sight, really. It doesn't just rewrite history books, it touches our understanding of identity itself, and it's all tucked away in the genes of ancient Egypt. Just imagine for a moment the secrets held beneath the skin of the people who built, those incredible pyramids, the pharaohs, the hieroglyphs. Researchers are saying Egypt isn't just the cradle of civilization. It might actually be one of the most genetically complex crossroads in all of human history. So our mission for this deep dive, it's basically to crack that genetic code. We're going to explore these really intricate layers of Egyptian ancestry. We'll be drawing from what top researchers, genetic scientists, historians are suggesting. The goal here is to figure out what makes the Egyptian gene, if you can call it that, so special and, well, as you'll hear pretty soon, so surprisingly contested.
Oh, it's absolutely fascinating when you really look at the modern Egyptian genome. It's this intricate blend, almost like a living tapestry, woven from North African, Middle Eastern, Sub-Saharan African, and Mediterranean European ancestries. Genetic studies have even put some numbers on it. We're talking roughly 70% Middle Eastern North African ancestry, then about maybe 15–20% Sub-Saharan, and a smaller but definitely notable European influence, particularly from Southern Europe.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Almost a paradox, right? You'd think, wouldn't you, that ancient Egyptians would look genetically pretty similar to modern ones. But the studies on ancient mummies, they actually show a closer genetic link to populations from the Levant and Anatolia. So think modern-day Lebanon, Syria, Turkey. The paradox being that modern Egyptians seem to have more Sub-Saharan admixture, not less.
That's exactly the core question, isn't it? Why that difference? Why the shift? And it's not just some minor detail. It tells us something really profound about how populations change over time. It seems to be a direct result of, millennia of nonstop trade, conquest, migration. We mean everything from ancient Libyan alliances down south that brought significant Sub-Saharan influence to the Greco-Roman occupations, and then later, the huge Arab expansions coming from the east. Each wave just left its own distinct genetic mark, constantly reshaping the population over thousands and thousands of years. It really forces you to reconsider any idea about a static identity.
Right. So with all this genetic reshuffling happening constantly, how do historians even try to define Egypt's real historical identity? Was it ever just one single closed-off society?
No, not really. Historians increasingly stress that Egypt was always more than that. It functioned much more like an empire of connectivity, you could say. If you look at the big picture, it means different groups were consistently leaving their genetic mark. Lasting imprints. You've got the Hyksos arriving millennia ago from the Near East, influencing the north, then the powerful Nubians in the south, the Greeks under the Ptolemies, and later still the Arabs and the Ottomans. Each of these big cultural political shifts was also undeniably a genetic shift, just adding more layers.
And we have such a clear, almost famous example of this blending in Cleopatra, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she was ethnically Macedonian Greek, but she embraced Egyptian culture, even spoke the language. And meanwhile, her subjects were this incredible mix: Berbers, Nubians, Jews, Romans, you name it.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? You have a single dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty, ruled by bloodlines from a totally different continent. And their empire held together all these diverse peoples from across Africa and Asia. That naturally created a gene pool so complex, it still sparks debate, even today. Cleopatra is just a perfect illustration of how porous, how fluid Egypt's borders really were, genetically speaking.
And this complexity, this constantly evolving genetic picture, well, that's exactly why Egyptian ancestry has become such a hot topic, a lightning rod for these intense, often really politically charged debates. Let's maybe dig into some of those controversies.
Yeah, okay. One huge one blew up after a 2017 study. They analyzed DNA from about 90 mummies. It got a lot of attention because it reported essentially almost no Sub-Saharan African DNA in those specific ancient samples. And that directly challenged some Afrocentric narratives which emphasize, a dominant Black African heritage for ancient Egyptians.
Right. But the critics jumped on that pretty fast, didn't they? They raised a really crucial counterpoint about where those mummies came from. Why was that distinction so important? Did it kill the study's findings or just limit them?
Oh, it's absolutely critical, hugely important. The mummies in that particular study came only from one site, a single site in northern Egypt, Abu Zir el-Melek, very close to the Mediterranean. So that's just not representative of the entire ancient Egyptian genetic landscape, not by a long shot. Population density, historical interactions, they were vastly different between North and South Egypt. Down south, closer to Nubia, closer to sub-Saharan Africa, you'd naturally expect to find much more mixing, more admixture with darker-skinned populations. So the study didn't necessarily undermine the whole idea of Egypt's diversity, but it definitely highlighted very strongly the need for more geographically diverse samples. You can't just sample one spot.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sure.
So zooming out then, what about the bigger question, the one that gets really heated sometimes? Were the ancient Egyptians black, Arab, or maybe something in between?
Well, the scientific truth, based on all the genetic evidence we have now, points to them being a continuum. They were essentially a genetic bridge, connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe. What's really striking, though, is how modern nationalism, race politics, even colonial histories, how they often warp that scientific truth to fit contemporary agendas. And that's why Egypt's genes aren't just special, they're deeply contested. It feels like everyone wants to claim ancient Egypt, doesn't it? And its DNA has become, in a way, a kind of battleground for these different historical and identity narratives. It's a powerful reminder, really, of how the past can be weaponized today.
That is a powerful point. It's incredible how tangled history and even our DNA can get in modern identity politics. It really makes you think about how we frame the past. And Egypt's unique position, that north-southeastern corridor role, must have just amplified this genetic complexity.
Absolutely. Researchers really emphasize its huge significance. First, as a critical pathway for ancient humans migrating out of Africa, particularly through the Sinai Peninsula, which acted like a genetic highway, essentially. And then later, it became a major entry point for invaders, for settlers coming in via the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So this dual role, both exit ramp and entrance hall for humanity, it truly makes Egypt a kind of living archive of human movement, both ancient and modern. Not many places on Earth can claim that kind of history.
And speaking of continuity and change, there was that big 2020 study, right?
Yeah.
That gave us another piece of the puzzle. It found strong genetic continuity in Egyptians going way back, like 5000 BCE, right up to the present.
Yes, exactly. And that provides the foundational thread, you could say, the core continuity. But importantly, that same study also clearly noted an increase in sub-Saharan gene flow during later periods, especially during the Islamic eras and the time of the big trans-Saharan trade routes. So yes, there's a recognizable core identity, genetically speaking, but there's also clear proof of continued mixing, new groups arriving over time. It paints this picture of constant dynamic evolution, not static at all.
So pulling this all together, what does this incredibly rich, layered genetic history actually mean for modern Egyptians living today? I mean, their genes literally carry the stories of kings and commoners, warriors, poets, migrants, traders, everything.
Well, if you look at the DNA specifics, modern Egyptians show a genetic profile that's roughly 97% unique to North Africa overall. Yet within that, they carry a whole multitude of haplogroups. You can think of haplogroups like ancient genetic roadmaps, right? They tell us about the migratory paths different ancestral populations took. And in Egyptians, these haplogroups link them to Middle Eastern Semites, to Mediterranean Europeans, and also to Nilotic Africans from further south along the Nile. And then if you look specifically at their mtDNA markers, those are the signatures passed down just through the maternal line, mother to child, painting a clear picture of female ancestry over millennia. Those markers link modern Egyptians back to Sudan, to the Levant, and remarkably, even traces reaching back towards Central Asia.
Wow, so their identity, genetically speaking, is just incredibly layered, complex, and, well, vibrantly alive today.
So maybe the next time someone asks you, what race were the ancient Egyptians? Or maybe who are modern Egyptians descended from? The answer, it seems, isn't a simple color. It's not just one continent. It's a story, isn't it? A really profound genetic story of ancient crossroads, of fluid borders, and of shared human roots that stretch across vast empires and oceans. And perhaps, just perhaps, what makes the Egyptian gene so incredibly special is precisely that it doesn't fit neatly into any single box we try to put it in. Instead, maybe it serves as this powerful mirror, reflecting a little bit of all of us, and reminding us just how interconnected human history truly is.